Super happy to welcome these amazing people, Creative Tokyo, for today's panel discussion and networking. So to let you know the agenda from 7 to 8, we have event, the juicy part of that, and then we have networking where you can interact. I mean, you already interacted quite a lot, but yeah, that's going to be like some a solid interaction, networking part with other speakers and between yourself. So yeah, if you have any questions about the place or about the coding bootcamps that I represent, this is a place where we teach people how to code and how to build web applications and use data. So if you have any question about the technical part of this community, let me know. And yeah, super happy to give this microphone to Nondo, and he's going to be introducing our amazing speakers who just stood up very officially. I don't know why. But yeah, the floor is yours.
We're excited to be here. Thank you, everyone. Everyone, I would like to ask you one favor. If it's possible, if some people sitting on this side could just maybe move closer to center. So if people are coming in a bit later on, they can just sneak in on the edges. Thank you. I've got a bit of an introduction to do, so I'll let you sit down if you'd like.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. As a gentleman.
I think. Cool. Everyone, a warm welcome and good evening to Creative Tokyo's DesignX. This is a series where Creative Tokyo invites and looks at different industries that intersect with the area of design. Today we'll be looking at the area of marketing, so that there's two brilliant guests here to us. With that to say, at the backside you might see Carl all the way around. He's also from the team. He's going to be taking quite a few pictures today, so if you would like to stay anonymous, just please keep your mask off. Otherwise, feel free to take the mask off if you need to drink and so forth. Then in terms of our schedule for today, we'll be doing a 20 minutes talk, then followed by a Q&A. And of course, as Sasha mentioned earlier, we're going to have some good time to interact and talk together. And lastly, you're probably wondering who the hell am I? Okay, my name is Nondo, very nice to meet you. I am a UX designer and a podcaster from the sunny nation of Zambia. And yeah, I'm going to be speaking to these two excellent guests today. So let me start off by introducing our panelists for today. On the far left, we have Ed Thomas, and to our right, we have James Loginov.
Not bad. I'll take it.
I'll try. Thank you. And starting with Ed. Ed is a founder of Concept Design, working for multinational clients, providing strategic marketing and public relations with a focus on emerging technologies. For over 20 years in Japan, he's built a solid experience handling varied challenges, leading multicultural cross-functional teams. He continues to assist both domestic and multinational corporations, increasing brand awareness through planning effective marketing strategies, customer loyalty programs, and lead generation campaigns. Ed, welcome.
Thank you.
And on to our far right, we have James. James has been in marketing for over 15 years, working with the government, charities, in PR, and some of the biggest tech brands in the world. A former JET English teacher, he returned to Japan in 2014 to join his wife. Uncertain about the future and his career prospects, he, however, came back into the game, and 8 years later, he's now head of marketing communication at EKO Instruments, traditionally a private-owned Japanese manufacturer with global ambitions. James, welcome.
Back into the game. I like that part. That was the addition. Nice.
And maybe the first thing I'm going to ask is, I've seen that we've got quite a wide group of people here from different industries. I'll start off by asking, how do you define marketing as an individual and what your organization defines it as?
Okay. So for me, marketing is a process to understand the world. And I don't just mean this from a business perspective. I also mean this from a personal perspective as well. And my company here in Japan is a marketing consultancy. At the core of any type of consulting is communication. And these aspects of communication are the building blocks for everything else. And marketing is a process that, for me, helps me become a better communicator. And so I see them as something that is overlapping, and they are woven together. And we use the discipline of marketing in our life all the time. Many of you are concerned about, say, personal branding. Well, hey, that's marketing. Many of you, as designers, you are trying to make the best visual impact, or it could even go as far as, say, experiential design, and that type of consumer impact from a whole consumer perspective. And so for me, marketing is, I guess one way to say it is, it's a way of life. And that's what you would expect to hear a panelist say, right? So let me turn it over to James.
Right, thank you, Ed. Try and follow that up. Okay, but I'll take a bit of a different tack then. So most of you here, I think, come more from a design background rather than a marketing background. So the first thing you need to know about working in marketing, most people confuse sales and marketing. They think they're the same thing. They're not. You kind of spend a lot of your time combating that misconception and trying to educate people about what marketing really is. But my personal approach to marketing throughout my career has really been about, to use a keyword, empathy. I know it's a cheesy shorthand, but most people seem to have this conception that marketing is about coming up with the most creative idea, the most amazing campaign, the most original, groundbreaking. Sure, that has its place in marketing, but that's not what most organizations need or are looking for. What they're looking to do is make a connection with their customer. And so when I say empathy, it's about how do you reach that individual, that customer, that target person. And it's not always going to be the exciting thing. Sometimes it's just the right message at the right time. So for me, marketing, design, creative, it's a balance. I was actually asked by someone today where I kind of sit on the spectrum between design, creativity and data. And it's kind of a good question. My answer to that was I'm right in the middle. Data informs your decisions. Data can show you the way. It can give you great ideas and kind of signpost what you should be doing, confirm what you're doing. But you need creativity on the other side. You need design on the other side to make that connection. So I'm rambling a bit there, but there you go. That's.
No, I'm actually even going to continue with that. And James, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question in a sense of where you're connecting to the balance between design and marketing. Empathy is one of the tools as designers we use, and we share marketing, like we use personas and we use journey maps. How do you balance the two, the worlds of marketing and design?
I mean, the kind of stock response to that would be that it varies. It varies by the client, varies by the situation, the brief. So I come, before I joined my current company, I worked in an agency. And some of those brands I was working with included companies like Dropbox, Uber, I'm trying to think of other brands you'll know, Mozilla, so we make Firefox. And clearly some of these brands are more well known than others. Some of them are kind of a little bit more kind of to the B2C side, and others are more B2B. With one like Mozilla, for example, Mozilla is a very creative brand. You can really experiment with that and have a lot of fun with it. Others, like, I'm trying to pick a good one, ARM. ARM, if you've never heard of ARM, They basically design the chips that are in 90% of smartphones. So they're not like a kind of frontline brand, but they're essential, integral. They're owned by SoftBank at the moment. They had a lot more fixed rules. They were a lot stricter. And we got the social media contracts for Japan and South Korea for them. So, and in South Korea, I'll tell you, this team in South Korea were really strict. They did not like outsiders working with them. So in that case, the balance was definitely more towards data. It was, we had to kind of really demonstrate why we were doing the things we were doing and really back that up. But with something like Mozilla, it was much more, hey, you know, we are a cool brand, so let's be cool. But me personally, I like to kind of sit in the middle. I think that's the best place for me, because at any point, whether it's when you're working for a company or you're working for a client, at any point you have to expect someone's going to suddenly turn around and go, "Where's the evidence? Prove it."
Yes. And I would also like you to touch on that, and maybe because I'm almost going to carry on. It also sounds like there's an issue. I'm not going to say an issue, but a potential for educating your client. Usually, when we think of education, we think we have students, but in this case, the process of which direction and balance you take has to be educated or transfer that knowledge to other stakeholders. From your perspective, when it comes to those two relationships, again, marketing and design, and this time trying to educate what your position is to someone, how do you approach that?
So let me start by saying that the best time to educate someone who does not want to be educated is in times of chaos and uncertainty. And the reason that I bring this up is that a lot of you as UI, UX designers, you are coming in or finishing up at the edge of certain trends. Maybe you started off with skeuomorphic design. You decided to move into flat or material design based on whoever or whatever platform that you were interested in at the time. It could have been Android, it could have been Apple, and you have all these other considerations of what looks good and what is aesthetically pleasing. Some of these things will be driven by the industry, and some of these things just change. And in these moments of change, that is when you, as an agency, as a producer, as a creative in your own agency, you have the upper hand in leading people to whatever the best choice might be. And for some people, the best choice is the next new thing. I have had many different clients for certain types of projects where maybe, a simple example, we wanted to have a community blog-driven website. And the client at that time, a global multinational with divisions here in Asia, they heard that we could design, and this is back before websites and mobile sites were integrated. This is when they were separate, and you usually would have different servers for them. And not that long ago, only say 5-10 years ago, but still, it's one of those things that was out there, and the client decided, against our better wishes and our suggestions, you need to develop this mobile site, but you won't get the traction in the market that you need. It's not the best delivery system. This other technology is more robust and it is proven. And when we talk about technology, there's the design, the front end, the middleware, the handling of data, all of these things together. But for this promotional campaign, because of the considerations internally at that particular global multinational client, we had to go with the mobile site. It was fine to make, we did it, but these are things that you are fighting with, whether it's internally at your agency or whether it's with your client. There are some things that you will be battered around by the waves, and some things you can't control.
Actually, I'm going to ask you, so at that time, it sounds like you also did a bit of finessing of the communication, right? Because you had what you as a professional who has experience in this field, but you had to get the client to agree with that. So share us a little bit of that magic, that process. How did you get the client to kind of move towards your ways?
Before I answer that, I'm going to segue a little bit and talk about the people here who are on the stage right now. We have a creative director, we have a suit, we have a semi-suit. But the suits are kind of different. All right, sales, account direction, sales. Okay, account direction, project management, and the mad guy, the creative. Okay, we basically have the makings of an agency here. Okay, the interesting thing about this is that a sales team will usually get the project. Once the project is received and you answer the brief and you basically say, hey, we're the best agency in the world, we can do anything that you ask us to do. That is the moment of truth because you have no idea what the client is going to ask you to do. Usually the brief you answered is not the job you do. It will change, sometimes slightly, sometimes dramatically. And so in this case, our client asked us to do things that we didn't think it was the best idea, but we've done it before. And so as the project manager / producer, my main job in agencies when I work with them is to handle that type of internal sales. And so if we put this all together, you have outside sales, which is to the client. Then it's converted, then it becomes a project, then it must be ran, it must be produced. And so as the project manager and the producer, I'm really good at internal sales. And so it's a different level of account management or client management. And so when you talk about how did I get the client to believe that our approach or our recommended approach would best fit them, you do the thing that you have to. You make them believe it's their idea.
Yes, this man is talking to you. We have a Bible of design and information, and that is written in there. You have to kind of get the client to agree with it. And I love that you actually also went into talking about the idea of roles, because we might think of design and marketing as this specific relationship that one person, one individual can do, but as you've explained to your story, it's not possible. And I would actually like to kind of transition to James, because I know of your organization, you've kind of gone through different sections. Could you share with us how that team structure works in that partnership? And then maybe as the last question, I'm going to go for both of you, so I'm also going to hand the mic to you. Do you think it's possible that one individual can balance both the creativity, the madhouse of design, with the, I suppose, marketing is also creative, but it deals a lot of the bigger demographics. So I'm also gonna, once James got there.
Okay, I'm trying to rewind now to the original question, but actually, I kind of want to address one thing you said about crisis is usually the best time to try and educate people, because I just really want to agree with that. Best career advice I could ever give anybody is always be the person in the room offering a solution. Even if that solution in the moment is, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. It's such a rare skill. I've been in meeting after meeting, company after company, client after client. So often people just can't do that. They just go, this is the problem, this is the problem, this is the problem. If you are that one person saying, I'm going to take control, I'm going to sort this out, or I'm going to find out what we can do, you're going to be fine. That's especially the case in Japan, but that's a whole other topic. And the point about education as well, like how do you educate people? Again, crisis is a great time to do that. But sometimes it's just about being, particularly in Japan, it's about knowing when to push and knowing when to back off. That's been my experience. So of course I'm not Japanese, I always try to remember that every day. And the thing I try and bear in mind is that the British, European approach is not better. The Japanese approach is not better. It's just different. There are different attitudes and different styles. The reason I'm hired, this is kind of coming on to the question now, the reason I'm often hired, or I have been hired in the past, they hire me because I have a different outlook, a different perspective. But I can also culturally sort of fit into the company culture and gently push, gently prod, and gently drive change in a way that's disruptive, but not destructive. So yeah, to come on to the point about teams and how teams work. In my last company, I was doing a lot of what Ed was saying. I was going out and getting the new business. So that was a big part of my job. But the nature of our clients meant that I was also project managing. I was then managing the projects internally. And as Ed rightly pointed out, sometimes the expectations of the client, the brief that you actually commit to, has no bearing on the actual reality or their expectations. And so I was often brought in to troubleshoot difficult clients. And the best thing I can say about that is, the best approach to that is simply be proactive. There is a tendency when the going gets tough, quite fairly, to kind of back off, play it safe. Let's have a meeting, let's discuss what we're going to do, let's make a strategy for how we're going to deal with this. That has a place. You've obviously got to think about what you're doing. But being proactive, showing the client, even if it's just the occasional email, call, asking for a meeting, requesting it, showing that you care about their needs and really chasing up to show that, really impress that upon them, makes such a huge difference. I can't tell you the number of accounts I was able to save simply by going, hey, I'd like to have a meeting. Let's talk about it. I hear what you're saying. This is terrible. I'm going to take responsibility and I'm going to sort this out. There's no secret to it, really. It's just about being proactive, offering solutions. So I'm sorry, I don't know if I answered your question, but you raised so many good points. I wanted to just add my bit.
I have a really interesting perspective to add to this. And so we're talking about sales and business development, and let's assume that this is our agency. We have our creator who needs to be fed, and James has gone out and he's gotten us one of the best projects. Or so it seems at the time. And once we start the debrief, once we start talking to the client, once we see the other stakeholders who magically appear in the room on conference calls while we're doing this project, we start to get down into the nitty-gritty. And you make the new plan and you proceed. And usually it happens a month, 2 months later, etc. The client comes back and says, well, what about that thing? What thing? That thing James promised me. Yeah. And so, as the producer / internal project manager, you turn to yourself and say, why do you promise that thing? Well, we always promise that thing. Well, we didn't want to do it in this case, did we? Well, it seemed like a good idea at the time. And this also is an answer to the second question that you had. Is it possible for one person to handle all of these things by themselves? So in our worlds where I, as a marketing consultancy, my main role is actually planning. So I make plans to address a business issue, and then I will produce these projects. And so what that means is that when we have a situation like this where, oh yeah, we did talk about that, but I thought that we moved on to something else, I'm left looking in the mirror wondering why I promised that to the client. And so you have to be able to keep a lot of these things in mind from the viewpoint of account management. And then when you are working with your team, whether it is the designers, let's say the creative team. And the creative team can include designers, copywriters, coders. That is how most of us in the world of digital marketing envision these things. But things become much more complex when you start doing things like events or omni-channel campaigns. Omni-channel just means you are hitting everything. You're going to do the web, you're going to do in person, you're going to have some type of experiential event, etc. You're going to have point of sales, POPs, etc., etc. once you start getting into that level of complexity, you start to realize how important design is with holding that one big idea for the creative message, because the creative message is what you need to deliver on. That is the key communications. And so that type of thing, it winds up being very complex, very chaotic. And this is the thing that people like James and I realize after a while. We need that chaos to thrive. Because in a certain way, we thrive in making order out of chaos. That is the role of accounts and project management. Did you hear that, all you creators? We're here for you, okay? And all the crazy things that you do.
No, very, very true. Oh, sorry, this is my voice. No, very true, very true. And I think even with that breadth, I kind of also just wanted to take a step back and also just to contextualize what you're sharing here within the context of Japan. A lot of us here have either been in the country for a long time or we're here for the very first time. And both of you are sharing experiences from multicultural, stepping between both one foot in Japan and one foot on the other side of the world. I would like to ask you, what are some of the lessons you've learned? And there are lots, so maybe if you're speaking to someone here, I'll just frame it for someone as maybe someone who's really interested into marketing or is starting off in the area of marketing and potentially has a background in design in between. From the local context, Japan, what are some of the lessons you'd say that you've kind of picked up? And for that first lesson about Japan, maybe I'll swing to James and then let's do Ed.
It would be slightly annoying and go back to the previous question a little bit again. Sorry. The previous question was, can somebody do it all, basically,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Very quickly, all I'd say to that is I've been very fortunate in my career that I've worked coming from the charity sector, in local government. Basically, everybody wants something for nothing. So they'll say, achieve great things with no budget. Yeah. Which is fantastic, but when you're starting out, actually for me that was a great experience because I had to do everything. It's kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. I don't know if you've ever heard that expression. It's usually a negative, but actually I think in my case it's been a positive for my career. I know a little bit how to code, which helps me with web development. I would encourage everyone to learn how to code. I have some design experience or design experience managing different kinds of design teams. So I've done all these different things which make me a better manager, a better account manager, help me going out to sell as well. So I would say don't be afraid to try things, even just get a little bit of experience, because it really just informs how you talk about the bigger picture. And often when it comes to selling or convincing the client, or convincing your boss actually, which is kind of the next point I was going to come on to, convincing the people you work with, you're trying to sell them on an idea, and you can't just sell them on one piece of it. You have to be confident about the whole thing. And you only get confident about the whole thing if you actually understand it yourself. So even a little bit of experience and all these different expertise can really, really help you so much. Sorry, Nondo, your actual question.
No, this is good. Please just continue straight into it, into the local context.
Right, the local context. So I think I touched on this a little bit before. When I joined my previous company, which was, I'll just name them because it's just easier to do that. It's a company called Inway Public Relations. It's the oldest Japanese public relations, the original Japanese public relations company. So the founder, he basically started the academic subject of PR in Japan. So it kind of has this historical pedigree. And yeah, we had all of these foreign clients, but the operation of the company, very classically Japanese. Very much silos, everything is kind of siloed off. There's a reason to do that because it means that you can have sort of clients from the same industry, and you have a separation between the teams, so there's no conflict of interest. But it also meant it really put a cap on any kind of creativity within the company. People couldn't challenge the way things were done, they couldn't suggest new ideas, it was just stay within your lane, stay within your team. And then I was brought in, as I say, kind of as a troubleshooter, kind of to help communicate with more of these global clients. And having that kind of outsider status, now that can be quite difficult when you're new in Japan especially. Feeling like you don't fit in, like you don't belong, like how do I achieve anything? They just want me to translate things. But actually, the nature of a lot of Japanese companies is no one will tell you no. You can just do things until it starts to cost money. So, for example, I introduced Slack into the company, and we were talking about this before. Slack wasn't available in Japanese at the time, but I introduced it into the company as a way to improve communications across the teams, to give clients, global clients who are used to using these kinds of tools, a way to communicate with their account manager, and it started making a big difference. And then Slack launched in the Japanese version, and all of a sudden, everyone was using it. So my outsider status let me do something, introduce something that materially changed the company, how it operates, and how it treats our clients. So yeah, living in Japan, working in Japan, sometimes you hear foreign people talk about their foreignness as a superpower. I don't like to think about it like that, though. My wife and I often joke about the Gaijin card. If you have any kind of trouble, so how do I send?
I'm looking for my
I had that recently with my I managed to get the 4th COVID vaccination. Anyway,
that's when you pulled it off.
That's another story. But yeah, it just means that you have a different perspective, and if you are respectful, you can find ways to challenge and create change, and really make your own place within the company. And that's one of the kind of cool things about it in Japan. You have an opportunity to carve your own niche within an organisation, which I don't really think you have in the UK, where job descriptions are much clearer, the rules, the hierarchies are much, much clearer. Of course, Japan is famous for hierarchies, but that's a pass over to Ed at that point.
Okay, I want to come at it from the angle of, because most of the people in here are designers, you might be front-end designers, or you might be coders, supporting the integration front-end, middleware, back-end. And so with design as a superpower, what is that really about? It's about aesthetics. Bigaku, the study of beauty. And every company, every individual has certain aesthetics that they find pleasing. If you're a copywriter, you're dealing with the aesthetics of words. If you're a designer, you're dealing with things that are visual. But there is also sound design, there's environmental design, there are all of these different things. And so aesthetics can be a very formidable hack for getting your ideas across in difficult situations. And so as designers, you might think that, well, I was hired to do X, and so this is what I want to focus on. I was hired to do UI, UX. When you step away from that and you look at what is necessary to manage accounts in agencies, it's not just in agencies, but it could also be in marketing departments. You're not a universe of one. You're always dealing with others around you. And there is a certain aspect of appreciation towards certain types of things. This is where the hack comes into place. And so what James is talking about when Japanese companies, you pretty much do anything you want as long as it doesn't cost money. That's a form of aesthetics, actually. It doesn't disturb anything, so why would we care? And it was really interesting because he was able to parallel that with, well, actually you have more freedom in Japan, which we assume would be more hierarchical than you would in places like the UK, maybe even the States, for exactly the opposite reason that we would assume. And so as designers, especially as you increase in stature in your agency, you may be the hot shot with, what's that thing now? Figma?
Yeah, Figma.
All you guys are doing that Figma stuff, right? All right, I remember when Flash was the hotness. You make games in Flash. My website was made in all Flash. And then they shut it down. I don't even think it was Adobe, I think it was Apple. They just shut it down unilaterally. Took me 10 years to make another website because my last one was the hotness. But this is also what I mean when I say that you are coming on the edge or the beginning of certain types of trends. And the toolkit that you are using might be out of date. So I mentioned flat material. I'm probably using the wrong words now. You guys have moved on to something else, right?
Definitely still there. Some person definitely still there.
Yeah, and so this is the thing for you as designers. If you're able to step a little bit to the side, a little bit above your current position, and if you're able to think from the context of marketing or from that client perspective, and it usually incorporates some type of business strategy, etc., and you're able to get in between and understand what are the aesthetics that are appreciated here in this organization. If you can understand that big out there, it goes a long way to everything. And like James said, sometimes people just want to talk.
The only thing I'd add to that is, I said this kind of right at the top, it's not always the most creative idea. The most creative idea is not always the right idea at the right time. Sometimes it is about taking a step back, as I think it's suggesting, sort of working with the other people, the other stakeholders, to find the idea that's going to pass. And it's kind of a stepping stone to the bigger idea. And I think that's hard. I've worked with a lot of designers, I've managed a lot of designers. I know that's hard for some of you guys sometimes, and I really feel for you guys. Sometimes I'm the bad guy, I have to say no. I'm sorry, no, do this. You know, that's part of the job. But you know, it's a collaboration. I've always found the designers I have the best relationship with, best collaboration with, you know, we get the best results. Because we're not butting against each other, we're working to try and achieve the same outcome, the best possible outcome. Without giving any, I do just want to share one design horror story, actually. This is quite fun. The first rebrand I ever managed was for the charity I worked at in the UK. It was a cancer charity. I was really passionate about this organisation. Bit of personal info. I was diagnosed with cancer when I was at university doing my final year, and I was really lucky. Caught really early, treated really early. So you know, really didn't have a huge impact. I mean, my grades suffered a bit during that period, but you know, it didn't have a huge impact on me really. Except that it did. You know, it's the news that you have cancer. That's the thing that gets you, even if you don't feel it straight away. And so going to work at this charity, for me, was like a real passion project. You know, trying to help people who are living with cancer, who have maybe survived cancer. I really wanted to help this organisation achieve big things and you know, expand these services all across the country. And I had a nightmare head of fundraising. She actually brought me into the charity, and then the CEO promoted me out from under her to form a new marketing department. So that wasn't a good start. And then he tasked me with doing this rebrand of the charity. And I'll never forget, basically what I did was I had design sessions, design meetings, kind of like sprints with all the heads of departments, you know, really trying to get everyone involved in the process, like we were talking about, sharing ideas, opening the discussion, making people feel involved, like they have a say, and presenting our ideas, like convincing them, selling it to them. And her one comment on this whole process was, "That blue is too blue." How do you deal with that? So you will, I'm certain, if you haven't already, you will definitely come across people like this. People who do not want to get on board, support you, be constructive. And I think we were kind of talking about this a little bit earlier. How you deal with that adversity is actually the biggest test of how you're going to progress in your career. All the other things I've said are key, they're critical, they're crucial, have helped me. But being able to deal with that kind of situation without blowing up and telling that person you're an idiot is probably the most important skill of all.
In that case, why can you just make the logo bigger?
That's another one.
No, thank you very much. And I think on that note, we're going to conclude with the question part of our discussion. And we're going to move on to some questions and answers. I think the way we can do this is that you can just raise your hand and I'll pass this microphone to you and we'll keep one there. And so I can ask, who would like to ask the first question?
And just to help you all out, we'll take questions on anything. Careers, finding a job, the meaning of life. Look at who's up here. We've got this covered. So whatever comes to mind, just let us know.
Okay, it's not sort of criteria.
No,
not skin
not skin. As long as it's not that.
Okay, so what do you see as the critical difference between design and marketing? So for example, in design, you have a client, a user, you're designing screens, you're designing a product for them. You need to think about how they want to use it, how you want to engage with them. In marketing, you're dealing with different people, but it's still, part of the process is still the same. So what's the difference between the two?
I would view one as a tool and one as a process. And so design as a tool of communication and marketing as a set of processes which can help with this. And so it can help with strategy, but it can also help with delivery. On the side of design, and what becomes really important for you as designers, you will have to decide at certain points whether you are a crafts person or whether or not you are an artist. And these bursts of artistic insight that designers can deliver, depending on the medium that they are in, that is incredibly unique. That is not something that can be easily replicated through a simple process. And the other thing about this is that what makes design unique is always changing. And so the things that you think are incredibly relevant right now, in 1 or 2 years, they'll be somewhat quaint. And there are a variety of trends that I've been noticing. One was in the world of VR and HoloLens mapping. And so this is beyond what I do, but I'm sure that some of you as designers, as creatives, depending on what your particular background is, we now get into the question of, well, how do you design for these 3D or AR environments? There's also types of things that are coming out, immersive design. And so with the use of AI, being able to develop, say, 3D landscapes that from a flat design. And this type of thing, when I look at that, it is incredibly creative and it could be incredibly valuable. But it's going to come down probably to a suit figuring out how to sell it, and a project manager figuring out how to deliver that consistently to make sure that this new style of design can actually be successfully delivered. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah. That's good. I kind of just summarise my point on that is, design is rooted in creativity. Marketing has to be rooted much more in pragmatic concerns. Design is the kind of, for lack of a better word, it's the kind of weapon we use or the tool we use to achieve our goals in marketing. But the root of marketing is still, we have to support sales. So we have to show that kind of ROI. So they're inextricably linked, they're absolutely codependent. But one is coming from this very hard-headed point of view, the other is coming from a much more exciting, interesting, frankly, your jobs are much more interesting than mine, point of view.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree. Like, design can be repetitive sometimes, but but yeah, I
I
guess
think the guy who works with me would agree with that.
yeah, I guess like this is an opportunity to speak to a PM and account person like outside of the constraints of work. So I'm always curious. Like I always feel like I'm like inconveniencing my PM and like account people as a designer, and I'm just kind of curious, like if you're in the context of like an agency, like what is the best, like what are your favorite and least favorite aspects of like design? like what would you see like as being like the ideal? And I'm not saying that I want to be that person, but like I'm just curious, like I don't know how I'm coming across to like a PM and an account person. Like if I'm taking too long with a project, like because I'm waiting for inspiration to strike or something, like, you know, is that annoying or is that what you want? You know, I don't know.
So well, first of all, I would say if you're feeling like that, I would actually say that's not entirely on you. That's actually the responsibility of your manager as well. You know, the responsibility of the manager is not, you know, it's not just to get the project done or achieve the KPIs, whatever it is. It's to manage the team. So if you're feeling like that, that's not all on you. So that's the first thing I'd say to that. The second thing I would say is I've recently kind of had two very different types of designer. I've had one designer who was a company veteran, 20 years. So he's really like totally focused. That's all he does, and he is terrible at meeting deadlines. It's an absolutely nightmare. But his kind of company knowledge is second to none. I then had another designer who we recruited who is absolutely on the money every time, meets his deadline. Now, the guy who's been at the company 20 years, he will craft one idea, and that's all he'll focus on, one idea. The other guy will come to me with 10. I kind of prefer the guy who comes to me with 10 because I want my thinking to be challenged. I'm not the creative, you are. I need you to give me the ideas that I can then combine with the things I'm looking at, you know, the kind of data I'm interrogating and so on. But that's not to say the other guy's wrong as well. That sometimes that care and attention is what's needed to make an okay idea a really good idea. So, you know, I think this does kind of come down to the relationship with the manager and having that certain trust and understanding with each other. And as I say, that's not all on you to build that. That's on that person too. But that's something you have to work on together. But I think the only thing I would add is if you've agreed to a deadline, if you have agreed to it, meet the bloody deadline. So anyway, I'll pass over that.
I also think that this comes from the tension between being a craftsperson or being an artist. You could do it, and nobody would ever be able to tell that it, quote unquote, wasn't your best. You know you could do it. All of you know you can do it. The challenge that you have is you're trying to push yourself to do something better. And that is the tension between a craftsperson and an artist. You actually said it yourself. Oh yeah, it's not so interesting, I could get it done, it's boring, but I can get it done. And so on the account side, we would kind of lean towards, can you give me something that I can show tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock? We're supposed to show it at 5 o'clock today, but 9 o'clock would be okay. And so you wind up with this type of creative tension, but that happens in a lot of design departments. It is not so unique in and of itself. But if you want to talk about how you can make this better in terms of internal communication, etc., it's actually having that type of creative conversation about your process before you go into the dark room and stay up overnight, okay? Will I have it at 9 o'clock? I couldn't get it today at 5. Okay, well, I can talk to the client about that. Will I have it, when will I have it tomorrow? Becomes the most important point of that communication, I think.
Just like honest communication about your process.
Yeah, and so honest communication about the process is incredibly valuable because nobody else knows that. And so once you're able to, again, remember, in times of chaos is when you can educate people. If you come to the account people who were already stressed and flustered about other things, and you're like, hey guys, don't worry, I've got this, but this is how it's gonna go down. Okay, I don't necessarily agree with that, but if you say that that will happen, and it does happen, I can work with you.
Yeah, and this thing, it's kind of easy for us senior gentlemen, can we say that? to sit here and say, oh, you know, this is how you do it and you'll be fine. It is a process, and you kind of have to build trust. And so I think being open and honest about what you're doing and negotiating those deadlines, explaining those. Though I would say this, you've all seen Star Trek, right? No? No? Okay. Very famous original Star Trek series. You had Captain Kirk, you had Scotty, and it was always, Scotty, we need warp now. And he's like, oh, Captain, it'll take 4 weeks. You've got 4 minutes. And basically, I think they did it in a film later. Scotty explained he always exaggerated how much time he needed. I'm not saying lie. Of course not. But give yourself a little bit of extra room. Come in. Don't raise the expectation that you're always going to deliver ahead of schedule. You do have to be careful with that. But sometimes it's just good to give yourself that little bit of extra headroom. And then you can kind of impress with your speed, your effort, and getting in ahead of schedule as well. So, but yeah, building up trust, that's the critical thing. As a manager, if I know I can trust you, you're going to deliver to the deadline you promised me. Now, something might happen, and we need to change that. We can negotiate that. As long as you're proactive and come to me ahead of time, we'll do that. And then I'll have trust in you, and we'll get our house on fire. Yeah.
And then I think we've got time for another 2 questions. So, okay, you know what? I'm going to extend it to 4 because every question is precious. I would ask though, one for each person, 1 question, please. And maybe to start, we'll go this way. Left.
We have triangle of people who raise hands. So
Yes. So we can start and then we'll go.
yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for your amazing discussion. And I came in a little bit late, and also I'm working for VC, trying to build a startup in enterprise tech and helping designers. So please assume that I have less knowledge from all of you. I'm just curious. So let's say you're in a situation where you're trying to launch a new product and you want to test the marketing, or you're trying to launch a new marketing project. What is the hardest part of among all of the process? Because just based on my understanding is that you have to starting from designer, you have to communicate with designers, also stakeholders, and also developers. It's a very long, tiring process. And from a marketer perspective, just wonder which part do you find is the hardest part among all this long process?
It is not necessarily the hardest part, but it is one of the most essential parts. And you would be amazed at how many large, global, multinational companies fail at this, not just to mention, small, medium-sized companies. It is the ability to properly brief and debrief on what is required for whatever initiative that you have in mind. Depending on the brief, that can delineate what the emphasis is on design. Does it need to be interactive design? Are we just pushing? Do we need something that pulls? It is also something that impacts the entire program design or campaign design. What are the different elements that we need to have integrated in this? We also have channel considerations. For example, I deal with lots of alcohol products, etc. We have on-premise and off-premise. On-premise is at the bars and the restaurants. Off-premise is basically the retail channels. These are totally different animals, no matter what country you were in, and the way that you talk to the people, the end users in these markets, is totally different. I have been on the receiving end of bad briefs. And so you try and work with the client to ensure that the briefing becomes better. And sometimes you can still fail spectacularly. Maybe the local client comes and adds a lot of different questions and answers to help you get a better view of what needs to be done. And then once the project is almost underway, and it always happens like this, once it's almost underway, there's usually a review by a global counterpart somewhere. And that global counterpart usually has one or two things to say. That's not the right color blue, and why isn't the logo bigger? And so at that stage, you realize that you still have the wrong brief, but the deadlines have not moved. And that is really when the teamwork becomes essential, because you have the things that you want to do and deliver from a design perspective that will set this particular project apart. The toolkit that you have is, say, marketing and also project management skill sets to try and keep everything from collapsing under its weight. And so if you can deliver a strong brief at the beginning of a project, you vastly increase the chances of success. It doesn't mean that you will not have headaches, but it means you'll have the right type of headaches. If the briefing is wrong, then all bets are off. This happens with a lot of projects across a lot of different industries. And if you found yourself in the middle of something like that, look back to the brief. That's probably where all your problems started.
Yeah, I'd add to that. You can't really teach people how to give you a proper brief. You can't tell your client, this is crap, go away, try again, then come back to me. Not unless you're some sort of elite, I don't know, super designer, which of course you all are. But what you can do, what you can affect is yourself and how you respond to that, the questions you ask. So don't be shy about asking or saying, I don't understand. Because basically at that kind of early stage of a project, that's the one time where ignorance is acceptable. If it's a few weeks down the line, a few months down the line, and you suddenly turn around and say, oh, I'm sorry, I completely misunderstood, I don't understand that, it's too late. And you lose the trust, and to get it back is very difficult. So just at the beginning, really up front, this brief, I don't understand it, can you explain, ask, have your questions lined up so you get the information you need. But I think you were asking about how to launch a new product, right? And
yeah, let's say you're in a situation you're trying to launch a new product, and so the situation is that you have to work with a group of people that's new to you, and I'm just assuming that communication can be chaotic or so, and yeah, under that kind of circumstances, what are your tips, and what do you find is the hardest?
I guess sort of echoing what I've just said, really, you can't teach everyone how to be good at their jobs. All you can really do is be good at yours. So make sure you've got the information you need to do what you have to do effectively. And then from there, you can support other people and work collaboratively, work together. I think one of the hardest things in that situation, in Japan, one of the hardest things with launching a new product is the number of stakeholders and the number of meetings you have to have. We had a recent, it's quite painful experience again, we had a recent delay on a product launch because one person suddenly said, well, if you write the number 5, handwrite the number 5 and the number S next to each other, this is part of the product name, they look the same. I'm like, what? We print the labels, what? Why have we delayed this product launch 3-4 weeks because of this? Anyway, so that's kind of one of the issues in Japan. I think there can be a tendency sometimes to, there's a fear of leaping, there's a fear of going for it. It's a tough balance, it's really hard to judge, and even experience doesn't mean you get it right all the time. But knowing when to leap, take the risk and go for it, just push on, and knowing when to slow down, go back, review, check, maybe bring in more people if necessary. That's kind of one of the biggest challenges, regardless of what product it is or where you're at in the process.
There's one other thing that I would add to this briefing process. A brief is sometimes, whether it's the creative brief, etc., is also sometimes called the Yoken Teisho. All right, and so that is the list of requirements for certain things. One of the key things that is often left out in the brief is differentiating between the objective and the subjective requirements that you have. And you must be able to clearly communicate what are the subjective requirements that you have as a client to the agency team or your internal team, so that they really understand what you value aesthetically. Getting back to that point about Bigaku, because actually what you value aesthetically will override almost every other consideration for this particular project.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for sharing your thoughts. The short question is, what is your take or what is your opinion of bringing research in the middle of design and marketing? And then the longer explanation of the question, or the longer question is, most of the times the explanation of what the logo is blue or why it's bigger than what the client was expecting is justified by a proper research. Sometimes the real backbone of a design process is a good research. Sometimes the people who probably know how to be more empathetic to people or to users or to business or to clients or to designers during the design process are actually the researchers. So it's a little bit in between, but probably like the short question is the take on research. The longer question is how marketing will promote research or sell research if the client is expecting for my beautiful product.
I can go with that.
The short answer, in my experience, is do you have budget to pay for the research? If you do not have budget to pay for the research, what winds up happening at the agency is usually the lead creative and a person who is on accounts, but they have a dual role for strategic planning. They basically make their best effort. This is an open industry secret. They make their best effort to solve this business issue based on their or their greater agency's understanding, because it's very common for it to come back with the business issue that the client has stated, and there has been no discussion about research. If there is, the simple answer is you get the research first. That's usually the simple answer. But many times you do not have access to that research because of budgeting, because of scheduling, etc. But for all of the larger global projects that we have had to have local research. It may be online research, just surveys. Sometimes we're lucky enough to have actual focus groups. And that, like you said, that type of insight that you're able to get from on the ground information that is both qualitative and quantitative, it makes an incredible difference with the amount of confidence that your design team and your strategic planners can then have when they're going back to explain certain things to the client. Because now you have another dimension that you can layer on to your insights, and this is usually how agencies address it. We now have these unique insights that are, and this is the most important thing, they are relevant and they are current. In other words, they are the freshest insights you will ever have. But they're probably only good for 3 to 6 months. And unless you can run with that program at that time, you're going to be working on dated information. And so the short answer is, we love research. Can you give me research? I have a team. They're not too expensive. Yeah, whatever you have, anything.
We work for cookies. But many clients do not have that budget, and you cannot get that research.
The thing I'd add to that is most organisations, in my experience, don't really understand what research is. They're quite content to accept gut feeling. They wouldn't call it that. They would call it decision making based on experience and our sense of the market. I'll just give you a kind of a nightmare example I had recently. We've launched a new website, and of course we've got analytics from the website. And I'm able to show in specific numbers the increase in traffic we've had for specific countries. It's fantastic, everything's going up. And I did a big presentation about this, and then the head of one of our regional offices turns around and says, "Oh, well, you know, that's very interesting, but my intuition is that it's not true." Okay, all right, well, I'm not sure how to handle that, but you're wrong. So thank you for your comment. So anyway, research, data, the power of research is just not understood. It's not understood, and because it's not understood, people don't know when to implement it or what it can do for them. And we've talked a lot tonight about kind of how you kind of educate the people you work with, how you educate the client, the decision makers. And that's an ongoing struggle. That's an ongoing struggle because people don't like to be told they don't know something or they don't understand something. I guess I would summarise by saying, you know, every project I've ever done, there's been an element of research, whether it's online research or whether it's consulting with an expert in a particular field. So again, with the web design, we worked with the UX team and our web developers, experts in this field. That's not to say that their analysis is always correct or 100% on the money. You know, you kind of have to bring your own different perspectives to it. But every project I've ever worked on is richer for the more, you know, more research, more information, more trying to increase our understanding. Though, just to come back to my previous point, you still have to pull the trigger at some point. So I think research should always be an ongoing thing. It shouldn't be we only do it at the beginning and then we stop. I think it will always evolve and inform, I think as Ed is suggesting. But eventually you just have to say, right, go, and then see what happens.
Okay.
Thank you very much, James. I think on that note, due to time, we are going to shift on to the next section. I do know we had some questions to the right of the audience, but we're going to have a mingle session, so you can actually just come up both to Ed and James and speak to them directly. And with that being said, I would also like to say a very big thank you to Ed and James for coming here today, sharing with us not only their knowledge, their passions, but also some really, really good highlights into this relationship of design, marketing, and also how to, well, I suppose, grow in the industry as well. So from everyone here, and of course from Creative Tokyo and the Wagon, a big hand of applause to our panelists today. At this point, we're going to start a free chat. For drinks, Sasha might be corrected here. You do not sell alcohol in the premise, but you can bring from outside in if you'd like.
Yeah, so we have time here working until 9 p.m. So you guys can go to Maritza if you would like to get some drinks, just like 2 minutes away from here. Get some alcohol. Back there's also Jidohan Baiki right in front of the Import Hub if you would like some non-alcohol thing.
Thank you. And with that being said, I'm also going to the last reminder, so I don't forget this. James is looking for a visual designer. So if you like that part where he was talking about the management and the pressures of working with him, this is a perfect opportunity to continue that conversation.
And also for myself, I have an online learning academy that is focused on marketing. And so if any of you are interested in those subjects, definitely get the information from me and sign up, and you might find it useful for yourself in your career. All right, thank you.
Just an open invitation. you never know. One day I might be able to help you, one day you might be able to help me. So please connect on LinkedIn. Lovely to connect with you guys. And you can also read all about my recent customer service nightmare with Air Asia. So really, really important you all know about this, because oh God.
Yours is Air Asia and mine is American Airlines, and so I'm sure we could trade some really incredible stories. All right, thank you all. It was really a pleasure to be here.